bought or have. So Starbucks, Google, Tesla, Apple. Hey there my handsome and pretty little Cobras, and welcome back to the Cobras Nest. For those of you who are new, my name is Mignon Cobra and I make minimalism videos. Today's minimalism video is going to be a stock guide from a minimalist perspective. So without further ado, let's just get into the video. Let's get it, let's go. Woo. If you wish to help out my channel, you can consider checking out my Patreon in the link down below. And if not, then you can just help me out by giving this video a thumbs up and a like for the algorithm. Okay, so let's get into talking. So today's video is going to be broken down into two parts. The first part is going to be me talking about 3 ways that you can buy stock in the different ways. There's plenty of ways, but I'm just going to be talking about these 3 because they're the most common that I've heard of. And the other part of the video is I'm going to be talking about 3 reasons why I buy dividend paying stocks. So without further ado, let's just get into the list. Okay, let's go. Okay, so the first way that I've heard that people can do or buy stocks is day trading. I don't day trade. I think that it's quite gambly because at the end of the day, you don't really know what a stock is going to do. Like, you're not a fortune teller. You can't read the future. Like, unless you can, then I guess that's a little bit different. But I think on average, most people can't. So for that reason, I don't day trade. Another reason for this is actually because of the taxation. If you don't hold a stock longer than a year, it's taxed differently. And I don't like paying taxes if I don't have to. So this is a method that I just avoid. Day trading is this idea that you like buy a stock and then you sell it and you make a profit based on the difference. Or I guess technically you can also have a capital loss if you bought it expensive and sold it low. I think that day trading is a little bit too volatile for my liking, even though technically I have gotten into crypto, which I think makes day trading look like nothing. But I don't advocate for this if that's not something that if you don't have the stomach for it, if you don't have the stomach to lose money, I don't recommend it. I don't recommend it at all, to be honest, but it is a method that you could consider doing. When I first started learning about stocks, I remember I saw this one girl, she did do day trading and she made it seem pretty good. And I was like, oh, good for her. It seems pretty lucrative, but I can't do it. Okay, number 2, you can buy and sell short term. So this is like when you buy and sell a stock for a longer duration of time, usually over a year or 2, because this bypasses that taxation period. I think it's about a year. I'm not too sure because I don't do this. I've only ever had to do this once, and that's when I sold my stocks, which was already past the 6-year period. I had to sell all of my stocks to pay back my student loan. So I actually don't know too much about short-term holding either, but I have actually done it once as well. I bought the Starbucks stock back in 2016 and then I sold in 2020, and so that was a 4-year period. I bought it when it was really low. I bought it when it dipped down to 50, when I think there was like that China merger. A lot of people were really upset that China was buying a part of Starbucks, but for me, I kind of had like insider knowledge because I lived in China at the time and I did buy a lot of Starbucks while I was in China. It's really expensive. It's like 40 renminbi for a cup, and that's really expensive. So I was like, China's Starbucks is alive and well and thriving. It's super expensive and people are still lining up to buy it. So I was like, Starbucks in China will be fine. So I bought into the dip and I bought that, right? And then later I sold, bought it for 50. I bought 10 of them and each one was 50, and then 4 years later I sold it for 100 a pop. So I made a good little some profit there that went towards my student loans. Okay, and number 3, the method of hold for life, or I guess in the crypto world, hodl. It's this idea that you buy an asset or a stock and you hold it for life. Of course, holding something for life is not a guarantee that that company will be around. There's risk with everything, but it's this idea that you're buying the stock, hopefully one that's dividend paying, because you're gonna live off the dividends, or the dividend's gonna be coming in for the rest of your life so long as you hold that stock, or so long as that company pays dividend. You know, that's kind of interesting. This is my second time filming this. As I filmed the first run, I realized there were so many exceptions to everything that I would mention that I was like, wow, stocks are actually a lot more complicated than I thought, which is really weird because I feel like I have a system in place that's just like super easy. I literally just follow like millionaires that are just doing really good. I think maybe by this point they're multi-millionaires. The person that I follow in terms of stocks, I follow 2 people. I follow Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I follow Derek Foster, who wrote the book The Idiot Millionaire. He's also a Canadian. I just keep it real simple, which I will be talking about in the next point. So in terms of holding for life, I don't know how other people do it, but for me, I follow a criterion that's 1, does the stock pay dividend? Number 2, the overall gain is a lot better when you're not constantly buying and selling and making that difference. It's not as good as over span of time if you just held the stock. And 3, buying into companies that you understand and that you trust. That's pretty much the criterion that I use when buying stocks. I mean, like, if you think about it, why would I buy stock of a company using my hard-earned dollars and I don't know what they're doing with it, and I don't understand how the business model works, and I don't even understand it. I'm just setting myself up to be a fool, and the easiest way to part money from a man is to take it from a fool. So use these 3 criterions and I think you'll have a lot smoother journey. I know that a lot of people that I follow also read like the I guess like the profit papers, which are actually public knowledge. I should get into reading those, and I told myself a couple years ago that I would, and I just never got around to it. I really do treat my stocks very passively. I literally once a month, at the end of the month, I take my money and I pay myself first. I literally go in and buy my favorite companies and I buy. So let me start talking into the next part, which I can then talk about the companies that I buy, because that's actually, I feel, more interesting. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about 3 ways or why I buy dividend stocks. So the first thing that I do is when I buy stocks of dividend paying companies, because a lot of companies pay dividend, that doesn't mean that I buy only dividend paying companies. First, I buy companies that I trust. So I keep it really simple. If I can understand, or if I use or enjoy the product or service, then that is a company I put my money into. I don't listen to other people's hot tips about this company or that company. No, I don't understand that company. I'm not going to buy it. So for example, companies that I have bought that are very easy to understand, I bought Facebook. I have bought, some of them I don't have anymore because, as I mentioned, I had to sell off my portfolio. It's very difficult, you know, in a 1-year span. I sold my stocks in 2020. It's only been like a year. I don't have the capacity to make up an entire portfolio that was 8 years old in like a year. I mean, that doesn't mean that I'm not trying. But anyway, some of these I have, and some of them I haven't bought back yet. So, but anyway, coming back to companies that I have bought or have. So Starbucks, Google, Tesla, Apple. These are products that you and I interact with on a daily basis. If you're Canadian, the majority of my stocks are actually Canadian banks. Some banks I obviously don't bank with. I just bank with CIBC, but other banks I actually used to bank with TD. But anyway, that's besides the point. I buy a lot of the Canadian banks because they have a really good track record and I trust them, and our banks are pretty stable. I'm not saying that our banks are not corrupt, you know. They have crashed in the past and had to be bailed by the government. But generally speaking, if all the Canadian banks are crashing, I think we have a more serious problem at hand than me worrying about my monthly dividend payout. Okay, so coming back to that. So yeah, I just keep it really simple. I just buy the stocks of companies that I trust and I understand. And I know that a lot of American people buy, you know, Johnson & Johnson, they buy McDonald's. Yeah, if it's something that, you know, you can eat, something that you use, that you can understand, that'd be great. Like, you won't find me buying technology except for Google. Like, I'm not gonna be buying Divya chips or A8 chips from some obscure electronic company that I don't understand, because like I'm not an engineer and I don't know how that works. So I'm not gonna put my money in that, because like if I try to read their report, their like annual report, and it's like spewing stuff that I don't understand, I can't, I'm not gonna sleep at night because I don't understand what are they doing with my money. Okay, the next thing is number 2. I tend to look for companies, but not necessarily, but I look for companies that have history dividend payouts. And again, I need to disclaimer this, not all companies that have previously paid dividend is a guarantee that they're gonna do it in the future. These are all just generalizations. An example I can give of that is Air Canada. They had to cancel for the first time, I think in like, I don't even know, like 50 years, they had to cancel their dividend payout because of, you know, COVID and nobody was flying. So take all of this as general rules. There's nothing is guaranteed in the world of stocks, but as a general rule, I like to buy companies that have done a pretty good job of paying out dividend in the past, as kind of like, well, they have the ability to do it then, so they'll probably most likely be able to do it in the future. And that's just kind of like the trend that I follow. An example of this is the Canadian banks. Even though they have been bailed out by the government in the past, for the most part, they have always paid and been able to pay, and increasingly with the years, paid out dividend to their holders. So I feel like that's pretty safe. This is a lot better trade-off, I think, in my opinion, than buying penny stocks and trying to generate a profit yourself. I feel like that's just not me. So between the instability of like dividend stock, I'd rather go with that level of instability than other forms, if that makes any sense. Okay, and the third thing is this idea that when I buy a stock and I hold for life. It's this idea that it's the golden goose that lays eggs. You're never going to eat the goose. You don't need that meat. You just need it to keep laying you eggs. And that's kind of the idea with stocks, which is why I'm going to hold for life and hopefully not sell. I'm not saying never, you never know. I mean, it's always good to have that aspect. You know, stocks are there's a lot of liquidity in that. You can sell your stocks quickly if you need to, unlike, I mean, you could get that done in a couple days if you need it to. It took me, I think, like 2 to 3 days to fully sell off all of my stocks. I don't think people are able to sell off their house or other assets as quickly as you can with stock. So anyway, my point being is stocks are pretty good in the sense that like Like if you buy it for life and you just let it pay you out dividend, assuming that you have purchased the majority of dividend paying stocks, it's free money. I mean, it isn't free money, it's money that is reissued back to the investor as, I guess, like a show of gratitude for having put your money in with the company, because the percentage of ratio is quite small. Like I think to be able to, what is it? I think for every like 40, take an example of like, I think like TD, I'm just using TD, let me just use a generic Canadian bank. Say if the stock costs like $40 and you buy one of it, they're probably only going to pay you back like a percentage of like 2 to 3 annual return. So you're probably only going to get a couple like quarter. So you can just imagine like there's a very large ratio of how much money you're giving to the company in exchange to be able to get dividend. It's not a very like I give you $2 and you give me back $1. Have to invest a lot to be able to generate the type of dividend that I think people are looking for, you know, 2,000 to 3,000 monthly dividend. There's a lot of money. I think that one YouTuber that I watched, he had like $1 million. He's also Canadian. He had $1 million invested to be able to generate. I think like it was like 3K or 4K. So this idea that holding for life is hopefully that not only that, but the stock will also rise in price and that it will pay you out dividend. This topic is a lot more deeper than I thought, and I don't think I did a very good job of explaining it. I think I really need to reformat this. Yeah, I need to reformat this. It's the dividends you have penny up 2 to 3 and like it's history paying that I 3 like I'm just putting, I don't even know, like Derek by day dividend